All right, just as a warning for everybody, or warning, just notice, we will be doing everything that we take action on today. We'll be using a roll call because we are on a Zoom meeting. So we'll just to satisfy the legalities of what we're doing, we'll make sure that we do a roll call for everything. So at this time, I'm going to call to order the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board of Trustees special meeting Wednesday, February 9th of 2022. It's 3 o'clock. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Barnes.
Here.
Chaplin. Here. Delgado.
Here.
Fasella.
Present.
Hannon.
Here.
Nudo.
Here.
Dial.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of our agenda for today's special meeting. After you've a moment to review, a motion, a second, and a roll call.
I would motion that we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for today's special meeting. Roll call, please.
Barnes.
Yes.
Chaplin.
Yes.
Delgado.
Yes.
Fasella.
Aye.
Hannon.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
Dial.
Yes. Any audience participation? Do we have an audience? I can't see an audience.
No.
Okay, and we don't have any email or any correspondence to
No.
that end? Okay. Then we will move on to our action item for today's meeting, which is the solar array expansion change order, which is in your board packet. And we'll hand this off to Jane Solon.
Thank you. First, I'll say thank you all for being here for this special board meeting. We have a very time-sensitive change order on the contract for our solar project. And this is the work that has to be done to connect the solar array to our hydrogen production facility so that we're producing that hydrogen to fuel our zero emission buses with solar energy. It's been a little bit of a road to get here. We've been working on adding this work to the project for quite a while. At first, we tried to add it to Trillium's contract to be part of the hydrogen station scope of work, but the timing didn't quite work out because at that time we hadn't heard yet about the state grant approval and we weren't sure about the timeline for the solar project. So once we got the solar project started, we had been working on adding this to that contract, and it took a little longer than expected because of supply chain issues, coordination between the two contractors, Lions Electric, who is our solar contractor, and Trillium. And the complexities of it and just getting all the pieces in place took quite a while. So here we are with two options. One option will leave us without being able to complete the solar project until the end of the calendar year, around December. And the other option keeps us pretty much on schedule with the solar project. So those are options 1 and 2. We calculated the cost of the electricity we would have to purchase from Ameren if we go with option 1. And so you can see that option 2 ends up being about $3,500 less expensive to the district once you factor in the estimated cost of the electricity we would have to purchase from the grid in that time period from April through December when the solar array would still not be completed if we went with option 1. Mike McTavish from Dewberry, the engineers on the solar project, is here with us to answer questions as well. I think I'll stop there and see if you want to add anything, Mike, or if you all have any questions.
Jane, this is Brad. Would you give the board just a brief synopsis of what's really going on here, how we're arriving at option 2, and what kind of the components of option 1 are, or the timetable?
Sure. Mike, maybe you could start with a little bit of the technical aspect, the differences between the two. I have a summary in my own words on the page 2 of your board packet, but I'm sure Mike can explain it in more detail.
Thanks, Jane. Option 1 is essentially installing the medium voltage switch that we need to interconnect the solar as we had intended originally. Basically, what it would do is reuse all of the existing conduit and pathways that were put in place underneath the hydrogen plant project as is. And it also adds a utility meter that we require, but that's over at the sanitary district site, not at the hydrogen plant. So it's a cleaner installation. The drawback is the time. The lead time on the solar switch that would fit on site it's 40 weeks approximately, could be longer. So just supply chain issues are causing the problem. This is a piece of electrical equipment that just doesn't sit on a shelf somewhere. They're custom made. And to get all the components they need to actually make it, there's just a delay. I mean, what used to be 10 weeks is now 40 plus. So option 2 is more invasive. There's a lot more components, a lot more work. You can't use as much of what was installed under the hydrogen plant. Actually, you're going to have to undo some of that and rework it into new equipment. Still located on the MTD property, it just won't be within the hydrogen plant. So because of all the additional rework you have to do, the actual installed price is much higher, but the contractor can get their hands on the equipment now, or with a much less impactful lead time, and therefore they can finish the work earlier.
Thank you. That's a perfect explanation. Go ahead, Jane.
I just wanted to add, I should have said this at the beginning. The reason for the time sensitivity, besides what Mike just described, is that the part that is needed for option 2 is the last one available, and they can't hold it for us. So we checked on it this morning, and it's still there. But that's the reason for that we had a special board meeting and we couldn't wait another 2 weeks.
But the reason
Okay.
for the
Additional,
cost,
any questions from the board? Go ahead, Bruce.
the reason for the cost difference, 171 versus 282, is mostly supply chain problems?
It's the solutions for the two options are a little different. The location of the switch gear is different. The equipment is not exactly the same for both options. It's 2 routes to get to the same outcome, and that's the reason for the cost difference. The solutions are just different.
And the second option has a lot more labor involved. I mean, they have to dig down underground, find the spare conduits that have already been installed, and rework them. They can't just simply reuse what's already there. So there's a lot of just man-hour effort in addition to make option 2 work.
So what we're getting essentially is a sort of new and improved model of option 1, if we take option 2?
You're getting a solution that you can have faster. Honestly, it's not as clean of a solution, but it works. There's nothing wrong with what they're proposing. It's just more parts that they have to put in to make it function.
Al, go ahead.
How did you come up, and can you document the $114,000 in additional electricity costs? I mean, that number there is a substantial one.
Yeah, so that's based on our supply rate with Ameren, which is 0.05545 per kilowatt hour. And it's estimated that it will be 2,062,500 kilowatt hours that we will have to purchase from Ameren from May to December.
Is there any
What would our cost-
advantage besides having things going earlier with that? I mean, if it's only having it earlier, then there are other, seems to me there are other advantages going the other route. That, you know, a few months, when we rather have a good setup with the equipment on our property.
Good point.
I think it's still a good setup with option 2, and yeah, the main advantage is the timeline, the difference in the timeline, the 8 months or whatever it is. Yeah.
Everything would be installed on MTD property in either situation. It's just the lost, your prime months to produce solar power, obviously summer, because you have more daylight hours. So you're going to lose your prime solar production hours on the array for a year.
All right,
So, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So basically, we're talking about roughly $3,000 and some dollars just to get this going earlier rather than later is what it comes down to. Is that accurate?
Option 2 is actually $3,000 less than option 1. So the faster option is actually $3,000 less than the slower option once you factor in the electricity cost.
So it's 8 months faster and $3,000 cheaper when you factor in the electricity.
But that $3,000 is in the variation in the estimates here.
Absolutely, yeah, full disclosure, it is an estimate and we're estimating over an 8-month period of time. So, yeah, there's leeway there on either side.
So I don't see the difference in cost as being any kind of favor for doing it. But we get just as high quality piece at the end, either way, right?
Correct.
Yes, staff agrees, Bruce, that the cost is not, I mean, we would recommend that cost not be a reason that you make this decision. Our only point is that we gain the advantage of the 8 months. We have a perfectly acceptable solution. We gain the 8 months of solar production. And while the initial estimate, the initial costs for the options, it looks like there's a great difference. We're just saying that basically cost is a wash.
So when you
Al,
figure
did
the
you have- oh, go
electricity
ahead,
from
Phil.
the solar field, you're not taking the maximum output of that solar field. You're taking some average given cloudy days and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
When they calculate the amount of solar production, we use software, and that uses average weather data over decades that have been, gathered. So you're right, it could be a unusually cloudy, rainy summer, and you might not get that.
So just so I've got this, our setup is we're doing this, we're primary metered on this, correct? So we're getting sub-distribution voltage from Ameren, and then we are stepping it down ourselves on our side of the meter, correct?
Actually, our solar array is stepping it up to utility voltage. You're getting a 1247 kV, which is what your electrical service is. We're interconnecting on the customer side of the meter. So
Is it primary metered or secondary metered though? Because I'm seeing this, it says basically 15 kilovolt, that would be on the primary side, right?
Well, your service is technically 15 kilovolt.
So
There's
we're
jumps.
primary metered, we're getting sub-distribution voltage from Ameren, we own the transformer.
You own the transformer, correct?
So this is basically a switch that's allowing us to tie the primary voltage, the high voltage or medium voltage coming from the sanitary district site into basically the back side of the meter. Is that what this component is doing?
Yeah, you're basically interconnecting between the meter for the service for the hydrogen plant and the 15 kilovolt gear at the hydrogen plant.
Got it. So basically our original plan was we have an existing switchgear cabinet inside of that fancy aluminum enclosure that we built. And we have an open space in there for some specific square D high voltage switch, correct?
Yeah, there's a location that was set aside for that to be added.
And when we went to order that part, they said, oh crap, we've got a 40-week lead time on this.
Yes.
So we're set up with net metering, which means we can carry forward surpluses that we create from month to month. So if we, to a limited extent, so if we generate extra power in May, June, July, and August, we can carry some of that surplus forward, and then if we use more power in the winter months, we get credit for that on our bill.
I believe at your tier, you can carry it forward for 1 month.
For 1 month.
So if you overproduce in July, you can use it in August.
Got it. All right.
And if I can just add on to that, in addition to that, Phil, generally speaking, the electrolyzer is going to be running not just during the day, but it runs day and night. And so the overage that we produce during the day, we'll start using that in the, that night in effect.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So we were able to source basically a different switch. We can build a separate pad outside of that fancy aluminum enclosure, reroute some conduit, and now we can use basically what happens to be an off-the-shelf switch that you guys were able to source and find, and order that in, get it in pretty quick, set it on that pad, hook it up, and we'll just leave the space in the cabinet alone and basically route around it. So we've got kind of a second switchgear we're thinking about putting in.
Yeah, basically, instead of having the switch in the lineup inside the aluminum enclosure, it would be in its own lockable enclosure out on the site on its own pad.
Okay.
And you would have the space inside the enclosure, and you'd have conduit stubbed into it, so if you ever needed to do something in the future,
It might come in
that's
handy.
there. So
So the biggest advantage to this, in my mind, I think all of us are anxious to see if this thing works. But then there's also, right now, we've still got warranty periods, and do we still have any on-site reps around from Trillium and stuff? So if we throw a load on this thing and things start to get hairy, we've got a lot of people here that can sort it out. If we wait until November, we may not have as good of support, and we don't have as many years of warranty left, correct?
I appreciate what you're saying, and I nodded yes, there are people still on site. I don't know that that necessarily means they're going to be here in April, that they would normally be here in April. I think that our plan is that when we flip the switch on this, we're going to have all hands on deck, and we'll have the electrolyzer people here, Trillium will be here. That would at least be my intention. I think we still have to have that conversation, but I think they need to be here.
If we put this installation off until essentially the beginning of '23, is that going to affect our ability to add more hydrogen fuel buses?
No, we are planning for the next purchase, but that's still much further out than that date. So no, there would be no impact.
Al, did you have an additional question or follow-up to your original?
Phil should have been the general on this one. He sounds like he knows what's going on with it, but he answered a couple of my questions. My only other question is there a scenario where we will have to draw off of traditional electrical input? And how is that budgeted? Have you figured out that sometimes the solar will not be available because of extenuated bad weather, et cetera?
Well, we knew that there was going to be a delay when we put the budget together for this current fiscal year that we're in. We knew that the two projects didn't line up because the award for the state grant was, well after the fact of when we started the Trillium project. So yes, we've budgeted the electrical cost. Well, we budgeted an estimated electrical cost, thinking that we would start the solar service up in the spring. So that's what we estimated. We're well under budget. So if you all decided to go with option one, it's not that we're going to be scrambling, trying to come up with the funds to pay the utility cost. I think we'll be fine in that regard, but
no,
we're spending that money
I didn't mean it that
unnecessarily.
way, Carl. Carl, I was thinking of in year 2, 3, and 4, will there be a scenario where we would have to draw for conventional electrical needs if we have extended bad weather and the solar panels are drawing enough?
That is possible, and that is one of the advantages with the way that we've designed this, so that we can and will at times draw from the grid, and so we are protected in those scenarios if the array is not available to us.
Thank you.
One last thing, and I
Go ahead, Phil.
hate to be the jackass here. I'm obviously in favor of doing this just because they say it's a 40-week lead time, but getting our hands on something to me is a certainty. Once we've got that piece, then we know we can put it together. But on the flip side, would our downstate operating grant cover some of the additional electrical costs that we're considering to be a trade-off here when we do the calculation between A and B?
Yeah, the utility cost is eligible for the downstate operating assistance.
So we might actually save some money theoretically using the space that we left open and waiting the 40 weeks, if that thing even shows up in 40 weeks is the thing.
Yeah, there could be a $35,000 difference there.
Got a question.
What advantage would there be to waiting until December? We've heard all the pluses of going ahead for April, but on the other side of the coin, what arguments could be made to wait?
Your installation, if you wait, has less pieces, there's less work, there's less disturbance to the site, and it's going in, I guess, neater as originally intended. So everything would be inside the hydrogen plant enclosure. You won't have a sectionalizer cabinet sitting out on site. You won't have the other piece of switchgear sitting out on site. You don't have to, you're actually losing a spare conduit with this solution. So those would be the drawbacks.
And are there potential consequences to those?
I guess the potential consequences are the more things you have, the more potential you have for something to go wrong. Like a car, you get all the bells and whistles on it. Well, it's more stuff that could possibly break too, right? So there's that. I mean, usually electrical equipment, once you get installed and hooked up and it's running and you maintain it, it's not a big issue. I mean, you just have to make sure that all your connections are still solid over time. Nothing loosens up. But
And they would all be secure even though they wouldn't be inside the building?
no, but they'd be lockable. I mean, no one is going to be able to walk up to it and just open it up and get into it.
Got a question.
Right.
You're saying there's no batteries in this system? No battery storage?
No.
That's correct. There's no battery storage.
So whenever the solar field is not able to do it, or at night, say, you're using electricity from the grid. Isn't that when you do most of the charging of the buses, is at night?
We don't charge the buses. They're not battery electric buses. And so we fuel the buses with hydrogen. And when we're drawing power from the solar array or the grid that doesn't come into play with fueling the bus with hydrogen. There's not a direct one-for-one connection there, but I do want to say, keep in mind that we will produce more solar electricity every day than what we use in the hydrogen production every day. And so that overage then goes into the grid, so we draw down that payment of energy. This is not very technical, so don't go crazy on me, Mike.
You just need to think of the grid as your battery. So
there you go.
You're going to put additional power onto the grid during the day And when you need it, you'll pull it back off at night.
So you've got, for instance, today, you wouldn't get a whole lot of electricity out of that field, right?
Well,
You get some, but
yeah.
not as much on a clear day. You're right.
These actually perform pretty well in cloudy weather.
yeah, I
though.
think you'd be surprised at how, thank you, Phil, because I mean, the array that we currently have on top of our, the original portion of our maintenance building still produces on cloudy days. Now, rainy days or snowy days, you start really getting a drop off, and you do get a drop off on a cloudy day. But the energy that the solar panels collect, you know, if it's daylight, you're collecting that energy.
And just to add one more thing, we have about a couple days worth of storage space for the hydrogen. So the hydrogen is produced with solar energy, and if there's not enough solar energy, it pulls from the grid. And then that hydrogen can sit there until we need to fuel. So it doesn't matter what time of day we're fueling.
Presumably produces more hydrogen in a day than it needs,
Yes,
than the system needs.
yep,
Gotcha.
than our two buses need,
Now,
yes.
if you had a battery bus instead of a hydrogen bus, you and a solar field, you'd have to have an extra set of batteries that you're charging during the day that you substitute onto the bus that night. Something like that, right? For instance, yeah.
If we had battery electric buses, we wouldn't have that storage that I just described, a couple days worth of storage that could be produced at any time.
Yeah. I'm still back at the electric bus option. Of course. Thanks.
Additional questions from the board on this item? So my only other question is, we obviously, since we've been running this for a little while, we have some history or idea of our consumption at this point. Is that accurate, or have we not used it enough to have an idea what our consumption is?
We don't have a good idea of our consumption yet because the commissioning it is still has been ongoing for the past few months, and so we that uses a different amount of hydrogen than what we will use on a daily basis.
All right. Additional questions from the board? I think we should, if we're looking for a recommendation from, and I don't have the full packet in front of me, I apologize. Do we have a staff recommendation on the option? I assume that it's option B.
Yes, that's our
But I
recommendation.
can't say.
I got
Okay.
one more question. How do you heat the buses?
ahead.
Sorry, Bruce, how do you what?
Heat the buses,
Heat the buses?
the hydrogen buses.
Well, the fuel cell produces the
Some.
chemical process in the fuel cell of generating electricity also generates heat, and that excess heat from the fuel cell is diverted, and that's used to heat the cabin, the passenger cabin.
That's enough?
It is, there is an auxiliary heater for when it's not enough, if it's super cold, but generally speaking, that is enough.
But then when it's super cold, what do you do?
Then there's an electric auxiliary heater.
Oh, you got that on the bus too,
Mhm.
okay. And that's battery charged, that's a battery setup.
That is powered by the electrical system on the bus. And you're correct, there are batteries on the bus. The fuel cell produces electricity that maintains the state of charge for the battery system on the bus, which then is what powers the electrical system on the bus.
All right. If there are no further questions from the board, we will be taking a poll on
Brad?
staff. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Emily has a question.
Oh, sorry, it's
Go ahead.
Brianna.
Yeah, sorry. You're good.
sorry.
I had a quick question for the the maintenance of option 2 that has like more parts is have you guys figured out like long term if that would be more expensive to maintain than just waiting and doing the more simpler option?
I think, Mike, if you have a response for that.
I think a lot of that's owner maintained, it's just visual inspection, more so than actually getting in there and hiring an electrical contractor to do that.
Yeah, so I think the answer is no. We don't think there will be significantly more maintenance necessary.
All right, if that's all the questions, we will be polling option B for the earlier installation. I'll ask for a roll call. Actually, we'll ask for a motion in a second on that.
I would motion that we go ahead with option B and secure this part as soon as possible while we still can.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve option B for the solar array connection. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Aye.
Hannon,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that carries. That was our only action item for today. Our next meeting, our regular meeting will be February 23rd, 2022 at 3:00 at Illinois Terminal. We'll be moving for adjournment, and I'll remind everybody while we've got you all together to get your statement of economic interest completed and submitted to the county clerk at your earliest convenience. At this time, I'll ask for a motion and a second for adjournment.
Chairman Deal, before we get that, just to clarify, the motion was for option B, and it's actually identified as option 2 in the packet. So just to make sure that that is the proper motion, it's not B, it's option 2 for the clerk.
Okay,
That's all.
that was my understanding. I'm sorry, I don't have the packet in front of me, so apologize for that.
Should we go ahead and do a roll call vote on that?
Option
What was it,
two.
option 2, as well as a motion to adjourn?
If we want to clean that up, let's go ahead and do that. If that's acceptable to the motion makers of that, we'll adjust the B to a 2, and we'll have another roll call.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Aye.
Hannon,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, motion carries. Motion and second for adjournment.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn our special meeting. Thank you for your participation. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Aye.
Hannon,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all again. Appreciate it. Thanks for working with Al and I since we're remote today. Have a great week. Thank you.
And I'm COVID.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, doggone it. All right.